All right, happy Father's Day, children. This is your favorite Sunday school teacher, K. Edward Copeland, coming to you through the facilities of New Zion Missionary Baptist Church in Rockford, Illinois. This is the day the Lord has made, and we're definitely going to rejoice and be glad in it. Happy Father's Day. We're grateful to God for all of our fathers, grandfathers, uncles, big cousins, foster fathers, and just coaches, barbers, and everybody else that has stood in the gap as a father figure. We appreciate you today and thank God for each and every one of you. Today, I'm going to do a little Father's Day tribute from Scripture to just sort of help us all. I recognize that on Father's Day, there's a spectrum, there's a continuum, that is, of experience that we collectively have had with our fathers. That is to say, some have had super dads, some have had deadbeats, and we're going to address all of that and help us to move forward. But before I do, I want you to check in right quick. Let us know how you're doing today, whether you're watching this live or if you're watching later in the day, later in the week, if you're catching us on some other platform. Number one, let us know how we're coming through. Let me hear from somebody as we get our technology set here and get ready to go. Let us know if we're coming through clearly, if you can see us well, all those types of things. Good, I see everybody checking in. The prophetess say I'm coming through clear, so I think I'm good. With my thank God for sunshine. Thank God for sunshine because I'm solar powered. But I see it beaming on my big fat head, and that's good. I thank God for that. We're trying to work on the technology here. I noticed over the last couple of weeks that the sound, it seems like sometimes when I'm turning my head or whatever, doing a certain thing, that it comes in and out. So I'm trying to speak directly into this little mic, and I'm hoping that we're coming through clearly enough for you to hear us. All right. Thank you, daughter. It's coming in loud and clear. Go ahead and let us know how you're doing today. That is, where are you emotionally, spiritually, mentally? Let us know where you are. And then, secondly, I want you to type in what you appreciate most about your father or the father figure in your life. That is, you can choose your biological father, or you can choose grandfather, the uncle, the coach, the pastor, the old deacon, the person who has stood in as the father figure in your life. Go ahead and type in the thing that you're most appreciative, the thing about them that you appreciate the most. Was that thunder? Well, blessed be God. Thank you for the happy Father's Day wishes from each and every one of you. I see you as you're coming on in the room. I'm going to give you about another 90 seconds to type in where you are right now, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Type in a word or phrase. Let us know where you are today. And then, secondly, I want you to type in the thing you appreciate the most about your father, the father figure that comes to mind. And aren't you glad? I want to say something just in passing. This is my sister and I, this is our first Father's Day without the physical presence of our father. And I'm grateful to God, and I believe I speak for her. We're grateful to God for the legacy of a loving Christian father. And I also want to thank God, because he was conscientious about this, I also want to thank God for the other godly men that my father kept around us, like uncles. I'm thinking of my Uncle Lloyd right now, like other godly inspirations, because it really does take a village to raise a child. So I'm grateful for the collective. I honor the memory of Reverend Hezekiah Brady Jr., who was a great father figure for me. Thank God for the legacy of Reverend Wallace S. Hartsfield, who was my father's father in the ministry. God bless the memory of Dr. Lester L. Cannon, the pastor of Cornerstone Baptist Church, where my wife and I met and where we grew in the Lord. Thank God for the legacy of Dr. Claiborne Salter, the esteemed pastor of New Zion Baptist Church before I got here, whose name was gold when I was a child. Let me just say this in passing, and I want you to go ahead and continue to type in. I'm not seeing enough yet, and I know that some people are just coming in. As you come in, let us know where you are today, and then type in the thing that you most appreciate about the father figure, the father or father figure in your life. Go ahead and type that into the comment section, and then be sure to share this video as we move forward. I want to pause and honor also the memory, as I was saying, of Dr. Claiborne Salter, whose name was gold when I was a child. I can remember as a child in Kankakee, Illinois, we heard about Pastor Salter in Rockford, Illinois. As a matter of fact, the summer that I turned 14, here's another great name that I want to make sure continues on in our memory. Reverend Dr. John Edward Thompson brought me and his children, me and my friends and his children, up to the state Congress here in Rockford, Illinois. At that time, Pastor Craig Smith was pastoring over at Providence Baptist Church, but Dr. Claiborne Salter, I can't remember if he was the president or somehow or another, he was one of the grand poobahs in the convention at Congress. And I can remember even as a teenager that he had not just a good name, but he had a presence about him. And when I saw him, I said, okay, that's him. I thought, in my mind, he was famous. That's Dr. Salter. That's the one they be talking about. And I can remember him talking just very briefly as he was introducing one of the other grand poobahs and all those types of things. I said all that to say that it's a collective, and I thank God for the collective. I want you to type in, for those of you who are just joining us, we're asking you to type in not only where you are emotionally, spiritually, mentally right now, but then type in the thing that you're most appreciative for, the thing you appreciate the most in your father or your father figure. Let's keep those memories alive. And let me just point out something, and then we got to get into the lesson right now. While I'm still talking, I want you to open up your Bible to Psalm 78. I'm going to help us all here as we contemplate our fathers and as we pay tribute to them. I want to pay tribute to my contemporaries. That is to say, I've mentioned several names. Let me mention one other name. I don't ever want to forget, don't want even my church family to forget, even though he wasn't a member of this church, Deacon Eddie Price, who might as well have been a member of this church. Eddie would come up just to see about me. Deacon Eddie Price, my father baptized him. Eddie was a man. He lived several lives, but he was a Vietnam War vet. He was a Black Panther. He was an alderman. He was a community activist, but he was just a great friend. He was a sponsor for the Youth for Christ choir, that is the collective of young people that I came up with. Deacon Eddie Price was one of our sponsors, along with my mother. And Eddie Price used to give out demerits. We called him Demerit Man because at our youth group, we had sort of a system. If you act a fool, then you got so many demerits. And if you got so many demerits, you couldn't go on the trip, or you couldn't do this, or you lose certain privileges. And he brought his military experience, his Black Panther experience, and just his unique Eddie Price personality, everything he did. But here's my point. He's gone on to glory, and I still am benefiting from the deposit that he made in me. I said all that to say I had a godly father. His name was William H. Copeland Jr. He instilled a lot of things in my sister and I, some of which I'm going to share with you here in just a moment. But it was the collective. It was the Super Friends, the Avengers, the X-Men. It was the group of men, because good men tend to sort of run together. So let me say this. That's what I was trying to get at. I want to give a shout out to the contemporary fathers that I know. I've mentioned a lot of fathers who've gone on to glory. I want to mention some who are doing a great job right now. One of which is my boy, Jarvis Harris. He was on the front page of the Kankakee Daily Journal as an example of one who not only loves his wife, but is raising his children, having a godly influence, and all those types of things. So shout out to Jarvis Harris. I'm going to give a shout out to Pastor Devereaux Hubbard down in Peoria at the great St. Paul Baptist Church. What a great man. What a great father. What a great pastor. What about old Charlie Dates down there in Chicago? Pastoring 2 big old churches and loving his little wife and raising his little children. Wait a minute. How about Pastor Derek Hayes, who used to give me headaches, but now he's doing great things for the guy. Wait a minute. He's a great father. He's a great father. He's a great husband. And he's a great pastor. Wait a minute. What about Pastor Rodney Hayes? Another headache. Wait a minute. But he done turned that thing around. And what a great pastor. What a great husband. Matter of fact, Katina, we praying for you. If you see this, love your daughter. What a great legacy that Walter Hayes. What a name to remember. What a great legacy he's left with his sons and daughters. And there might be some others. I want you to, right quick, go ahead and take 30 seconds. Shout out a great father, somebody who's alive right now, not your father, but somebody else who's doing a great job. Wait a minute, what about LeGarrette Reed? Yes. I knew I'd get one amen. What about LeGarrette Reed? Loving his little wife and raising his children. Wait a minute, and here's what I like about all of these men that I'm mentioning. They're not just raising their children, but they're impacting other children to the glory and the honor of God. All the deacons here at New Zion Baptist Church, man, I'm not moving forward without mentioning what? Deacon Jefferson Darby? What you talking about? What a great legacy. What a great man. What a great father. Deacon James Leslie. What a great man. What a great legacy. What a great father. Deacon Melvin Stubblefield. Stubb. Great man. Great father. Great legacy. Deacon Gene Houston. Oh my gosh. What a legacy. What these men have done as they have not only raised their own children, but have influenced an entire generation. And then all these other young deacons. What deacons did I miss? I said LeGarrette Reed, Deacon Carlton Vines, Deacon Kenny McLean. Am I missing somebody? Thank God for all the deacons here at New Zion Baptist Church and the deacons here. Oh, wait a minute. He ain't a deacon, but come on now. Papa Reed, Leon Reed. Wait a minute. The grandest of the grand poobahs. The pawpaw of the pawpaws. Leon Reed, he ain't even a deacon. He ain't got to be a deacon. That's Mr. Reed. You don't even need no title. Just say Reed. That's him. And so we thank God for each and every one of you. Let's get into this little lesson here as we think about lessons from our fathers. Now, here's what I want to say, and I might not go, or don't plan on going a full hour here simply because we have a Father's Day breakfast here at New Zion. Matter of fact, if you're in Rockford and you're not getting ready, you need to be should be pulling your pants on right now and slicking your head, combing your head, all that kind of stuff to get out here at 9 o'clock. We're having a Father's Day breakfast. And I told Titus, I said, man, they got it smelling good in the parking lot. I got out of the car and it was smelling good. I said, wait, how is it smelling good? The doors are closed. They done got this thing together here. So come on out to New Zion Missionary Baptist Church if you're in Rockford and you can see this. But here's what I want to say. I've called out the names of great men, and I hope that you've called out some names in our comment section, and I want you to continue to do so if you haven't already done so. But I do want to acknowledge that as it relates to biological fathers, that all of us have not had the same experience. We've had a continuum of experiences. My father was there. Some of us have grown up in situations where maybe our biological father was absent, either physically or emotionally and spiritually, or worse than absent, maybe he was abusive. Maybe your father, and I didn't watch the whole story, but maybe you had an experience more like Kirk Franklin, where father was in the area but not engaged in all these types of things. Or maybe you are in a situation where are having to take care of your father in his old age. My sister and I want to thank God for my sister and her care of our father. I live in Rockford. She lives a little bit closer to, not a little bit, but lives closer to our parents. And she made sure that our father and now our mother wanted for nothing. And so whatever your experience has been with the idea of fatherhood, first of all, I want to acknowledge that for all of us, it has not been pleasant. It has not been delightful. And that's why I wanted to broaden your horizons to think about the father figures and think about the collective. Because sometimes we put too much weight on one part of the collective. Yeah, maybe your biological father wasn't there. Maybe he was less than what you would have desired him to be or what the Lord required him to be. Okay, we're going to work on that. But what about the collective? What about that teacher who took a positive interest in you? What about that deacon? What about that pastor? What about that Sunday school teacher? What about that coach? What about that uncle? What about that grandfather or godfather? Thank God for godfathers. What about that other man who God used to infuse some godly principles, godly examples, even some godly wisdom in your life? Let's celebrate the fact, and the reason I bring that out is simply this, is because regardless of what your earthly, biological father was or was not, if you're in Christ, celebrate the fact that you have a father that's better than the best father, a father who is merciful and gracious, slow to get angry, plenteous in his loving kindness and truth, a father who will never leave you nor forsake you. And I want us all to lift our eyes toward that, even while we do some other things as it relates to, let's reconcile the books here. Let's work this thing out. Open up your Bible to Psalm 78. Let me point out a few things here. And I want to give you a little formula. Again, I'm not going to be long today, but I do want to give you a little formula. After we take a look at Psalm 78, let's take a look at the first 8 verses. I'm going to point out a couple of things about my father as it relates to how he dealt with my sister, Monica, and I, and then give you a little formula that you can work with that is going to help you the rest of your life. And I want you to pay attention today, because the formula I'm going to give you, it really is transformational. It really is life-altering if you can get a handle on it. Psalm 78, let's look at the first 8 verses. I'm going to run quickly here. And I want you to continue to type into the comment section as their names come to you, those individual father figures that have had a positive impact on you. Psalm 78 says, listen, O my people, to my instruction. Incline your ears to the word of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not conceal them from their children, but tell to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wondrous works that he has done. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should teach them to their children, that the generation to come might know, even the children yet to be born, that they may arise and tell them to their children. They should put their confidence in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments and not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not prepare its heart and whose spirit was not faithful to God. Now, this is very interesting. I want you to read that whole chapter of that whole psalm, but I'm just focusing here on these first few 8 verses to point out a few things. Notice it said, if you're paying attention, it talked about fathers passing on information from generation to generation. Verse 3, we have heard and known, our fathers told us, and we will not conceal them from their children. Did you see that? And then look at verse 5. He said, which he commanded our fathers that they should teach them to their children. Right? And then look at verse 8. And not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation. Now, this is very interesting. I need you to recognize something, that fathers are teaching one way or another. Sometimes they teach you what you're supposed to do, and sometimes they teach you what you ain't supposed to do. Oh, they teaching regardless. The lesson is, am I supposed to do what you're doing or not do what you're doing? See, if you're grown enough, I'm talking to somebody right now. If you're grown enough to recognize, well, my father wasn't right. If you're grown enough to recognize that, then you're grown enough to take the lesson. That, okay, this is what I'm not supposed to do. I'm not supposed to be, verse 8, stubborn or rebellious or unfaithful to God. But what should our fathers be teaching us? Our fathers, and this is a word to all fathers, and this is a shout out to my father, and that is that we ought to put our confidence, look at verse 7, that we ought to put our confidence in God. That's what my father taught my sister and I. Put our confidence in God. Every day when he would come home from work, before he would bow his head to share in a meal, including the last meal he had, on the very day he died, he would always say, the Lord will provide. In other words, children, put your confidence in God. He taught us to trust in God. I have too many stories to tell about my father putting his confidence in God, not just to build a church or to build buildings, but even to raise us as children. He always, and my sister, I'm sorry, I intended to have a copy in front of me, but my sister has written a book, the memoir of our father, and it's called The Lord Will Provide. And she details it in the book, but I can remember actually when it was happening, when my father moved the family from Elwood, Kansas to Kankakee, Illinois. Back in those days, the Republicans ran Kankakee, Illinois. They had a little machine, just like in Chicago, how Mayor Daley had the Democratic machine. In Kankakee, they had the Republican machine. By machine, what I mean is they had that thing sold up like gangsters. I mean, and so there was a particular Republican who owned a car dealership. Man, he had this thing on lock so much that if you in order to get a job, you got to come through him. And if you got a job working for him, you had to buy a new car, a new Cadillac every 2 or 3 years. And if you didn't choose one, they would just send one and park it in front of your house. You buying, because that's how we kept the machine running. You see? And so when my father first got there, one of the other local pastors told us, man, you got to deal with Senator so-and-so, man, because he controls the jobs, he controls the scholarships and this, that, and other. And so my dad met with him, out of courtesy. He knew to count this, that, and other. And he said, well, if you want your children to succeed and blah, 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 you got to deal with him. And so Dad said, well, wait a minute. So here's the deal. In order for my children to get a scholarship, or in order for them to succeed and all this kind of stuff, I got to play ball with you. He said, yeah, that's how it worked. And my dad, in essence, said, well, I guess I'm just going to have to raise two dummies then, because I ain't fooling with you. And bless be God. Bless be God. He didn't raise two dummies, and we got all the scholarships. My sister in particular. But this very scholarships, they say you ain't going to get. I got them. My sister got them. Both of us graduated from the University of Illinois. My sister, if you go down to the University of Illinois, you see her name on the thing, Bronze Scholar or Marshall Scholar. I'm a Waller Scholar. We did scholar this, scholar that. Why? Because my father said, I'm going to put my confidence in God. All I'm trying to tell you is one thing that a father ought to teach you is put your confidence in God. Not in me, but put your confidence in God. And that's what our father taught us. Let me hit a couple more licks, and then I got to give you this formula, because I want to make sure that you get the formula before I get out of here. This text says in Psalm 78 that fathers teach their children how to put their confidence in God and how to not forget his works. One of the things a good father or father figure will do is tell you stories. Keep on telling you. The dad used to tell us stories about when this happened and that happened when he was growing up. Man, I was thinking about this the other day. Because our father regularly ate lunch. Let me say it this way. I regularly ate lunch with somebody who regularly ate lunch with somebody who was born in slavery. That is to say, our father just died last year at 90 years old. But his grandfather, William Copeland, was born in 1852. He lived to be 110 years old. That is to say, my great-grandfather, who was born in slavery, died the year I was born. And Dad used to spend time with him. He used to go down to Arkansas and listen to him tell the stories of when he came up in slavery. In point of fact, part of the stories of God's faithfulness in the life of my family is my great-grandfather, William Copeland, bought over on a ship with his mother and his sister. He was a lap baby. Ship caught on fire as it was close to shore. They're enslaved people being brought over here from the islands, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe illegally, because the slave trade as it relates to the transatlantic was supposed to have long been over. This is 1852. But either way, bottom line is the ship caught on fire. His older sister knew how to swim, jumped overboard, but the mother did not know how to swim. Sister jumped overboard. The mother threw my great-grandfather overboard, and his sister caught him in the fold of her little dress. And, of course, rescued him. Come to find out, they never did see the mother again, but they found out that she did survive the fire and that she was on a plantation some distance away. They never did see her again. But God saved him, rescued him through a shipwreck, through a fire. His sister raised him like she was the mother. He lived to be 110 years old, was blind most of his elder years, but born in slavery and raised to the point that by the time he was 110 years old, he had acquired so much property that he donated property to the city of Magnolia, Arkansas, donated the property for the First Baptist Church, donated the property for the high school, donated or actually leased some of the property for the regional airport down there, and our family is still getting residuals off of that. All I'm trying to say is that's a story that I heard, that my great-grandfather told my grandfather, that dad passed on to me, that I rehearsed it to my children. Why? Because you don't want to forget what God has done. Hang on. That if God can bring an enslaved person through fire, through slavery, through Jim Crow, to the extent that he amasses so much property, he can give property away, then what am I doing crying about my little trial, whatever this little thing I'm fitting to go through? It ain't no bigger than what my great-granddaddy had to come through. But how do I know that? Because they kept telling me the stories. A good father will tell the stories of God's deliverance so the children won't forget. Let me go ahead and give you this formula, because I could keep on going. But I want you to see something here. I want you to write this down. I got this from Psalm 78, and I've sort of formalized it. And here, I'm going to give it to you. Let me give it to you. And then let's unpack it. As it relates to our fathers, there are 4 things that we need to do as it relates to their legacy, as it relates to our memory of them, as it relates to what lessons they have passed on to us. Here they are. Write these down. Number 1, audit, A-U-D-I-T. Audit what you have inherited. In other words, audit. Number 2, acknowledge. Acknowledge the reality of your situation. Number 3, appreciate. Appreciate the good things, the lessons that you've learned, either by positive example or negative example. And then number 4, adjust your behavior accordingly. Audit what you've inherited. Acknowledge your reality. Appreciate lessons learned. Adjust your behavior accordingly. Let's unpack this. And then I'm going to let y'all go so I can go eat my breakfast. Let's hear it. Audit what you've inherited. What I mean by that is, if you were to read the rest of Psalm 78, which we don't have time to do today, basically what the author does, this is Asaph, what he does and what we see as a biblical principle is that we should not just take what our forefathers did or did not do, what they said or did not say, without auditing it. What do you mean audit? Okay, some traditions, some habits, some patterns that have been passed on to you are productive, they're helpful, they're useful. Some might have been helpful, productive, and useful at one time, but now they're harmful, they're counterproductive, and they're actually detrimental to you. How do you tell the difference? You got to audit that thing. You got to say, okay, now let's take what our forefathers did. Let's see what they did by positive example, by negative example. Let's take what Daddy and them said, and let's see this thing. Let's audit this thing. So now, is this useful? Is this a debit or is this a credit? Is this an asset or is this a liability? As I take what has been passed on to me, can I wear it? So my dad, as mom has been going through his stuff, there's a great friend of ours, like a brother, grew up with my sister. I mean, they like brothers and sisters. I mean, came up together from kindergarten all the way up through. And so as mom has been going through dad's stuff, she said, now, Ed, can you wear this? I'm auditing. Like, wait a minute. Some things have been, she's trying to pass on some things. There's some things that have been left to me that I can't wear, that don't fit me, that are not appropriate for this time and age. Now, there's some things that fit me well. Matter of fact, I have in my closet right here at the church, and I have in a few other places, some clothes that have been passed on to me. In other words, I have some of my daddy's ties. I looked at the tie, I said, hey, this still works. This is still fashionable. This still makes a statement. I have a sweater up here in my closet from Pastor Hezekiah Brady. His wife said, well, I think Pastor Brady will want you to have this. And so when I want to feel close to old man Brady, when I want to feel like I'm wise, I just get up there and get the sweater and put it on. Wait a minute. Here's all I'm trying to say. There's certain things that you have inherited, certain lessons, certain sayings, certain ways of looking at life, certain patterns, certain habits, and all those types of things that you've inherited that you need to audit to see if it's still useful. All I'm trying to say is that just like a good piece of fish, I ain't talking about, the fish you get at McDonald's. I'm talking about like buffalo fish. I'm talking about the fishy fish. They're like a good piece of fish. You got to learn how to pick the meat from the bone, eat the meat, leave the bone alone. There's certain things that you need to make sure you hang on to. My father, when we were growing up, couldn't nobody eat till we all got to the table. Okay. In the audit of what I've inherited, that seems like something I need to hang on to. Father used to pray for us. We could catch our father praying at various times of the day. Our father would always brag on us and let us know how much he was proud of us. That's something I need to hang on to. Wait a minute. My father did not take vacations like he was supposed to. Wait a minute. I need to audit that. He even said, man, I wish I had taken the time off that was given me and all these types of things. That thing caught up to him. Okay. So in my audit, I have to acknowledge the fact that it's all right to take some time off. My dad never closed the church. I'm talking about 70 below. I said at his funeral, wind chill 70 below. I'm sitting up there in the organ with my dad. Somebody might come, that type of thing. He never canceled Bible study. But wait a minute, he missed a lot of my activities. I can't speak for my sister, but some of the things I wanted to do in sports, he never came or whatever. And when I say audit, I'm not talking about begrudge somebody. I'm talking about take a look at, say, okay, now, what do I need to hold on to? What do I need to let go of? If my father gave me a lot of negative examples, that is to say he was absent or somehow or another he was not what he needed to be, okay, what can I audit? In my audit, I'm not just going to throw him completely out. Is there anything in there that I can emulate or a lesson I can learn that I need to make sure that I don't follow in his footsteps? Audit is the first thing, but then acknowledge your reality. Here's what I mean by that. Your father, for better or worse, has impacted you. And there's some things that you do consciously and maybe even unconsciously, subconsciously, that are a direct result of either your father's presence or his absence. And you need to acknowledge you need to acknowledge that it does affect you. Don't stop. So if it's a negative, that is, if he left if Papa was a rolling stone and wherever he laid his hat was his home, and when he died, all he left you was alone. If that's your reality, you got to acknowledge that it has impacted you. If there's some positive, let me say it this way. All of us, aside from auditing, have to acknowledge the reality of how our Father has impacted us for better or for worse. And even the best Father has impacted us in some ways that we still need to acknowledge and figure out what we need to do with that. Otherwise, you'll find yourself being your father unintentionally. Let me say it a different way. Sometimes I find my father's voice coming out of my head. Sometimes I find things my father did, I find myself doing. And here's the problem with that. If I don't acknowledge my reality, I don't want to be on automatic pilot. I don't want to just be doing things without intention. And so the things that that's why we start with an audit. But then I got to acknowledge, okay, now where am I right now? And what is my reality as it relates to, for example, how I think about my father, how I relate to my father or to the father figures in my life, and do I still need a father? Now, here's what I mean by this. So my father, my earthly father, has transitioned, but I have father figures, but I recognize that even a lot of them have transitioned. So Deacon Eddie Price, Pastor Brady, they've gone on. So what did I do? I said, okay, well, I'm missing some pieces in my portfolio. I need to acknowledge my reality. I'm missing some sort of fatherly advice. So what am I going to do about that? So I've gotten close. I purposely got close to Bishop Washington so he could pour into me. But now it's in the phase where I'm trying to make sure I'm seeing about him. So I have to acknowledge, okay, where am I right now? I was just talking to somebody about this recently. Say, okay, well, I'm the old man right now, but even old men need old men. When I say acknowledge your reality, basically what I'm trying to say, because I got to get off of this, do you have a father wound that has not healed? And what are you doing about that? Do you have unrealistic expectations about yourself vis-a-vis your father? Because your father was so maybe prominent or perhaps so impactful. Are you going against that? This is very interesting. I've seen this dynamic where a father might be very sort of prominent, and then his children go try to rebel against that to show that they are not their father. Preachers' kids do this a lot. And so you say, why do preachers' kids act the way they do sometimes? Sometimes they're trying to go against what they perceive their father's status or perception is. So acknowledge your reality. Where are you as it relates to how you feel, what you think about, how you relate to your father or the father figures in your life? What about this? Appreciate. These last two, let me hit these last two licks. I'm gonna let you go. We gotta audit what we've inherited. We gotta acknowledge our reality. Okay, how am I thinking about my father? You can be, let me say this. You can be old and you say, well, it don't affect me. Yeah, my father wasn't there, but hey, I'm all right. I didn't come. No, you old with a father wound. Do you know that time does not heal wounds? Time does not equal healing. It's grace plus truth over time that actuates healing. And you can be old. Now I'm saying this, I'm sorry for backing up again, but it just struck me because I can remember off the top of my head right now about 3 situations I'm thinking about of people that I knew personally. I'm talking about close, who in their 80s and still dealing with daddy issues. I'm talking about in church, read the Bible, prayed, all that kind of stuff. Great people, big old daddy wound, 80, 90 years old, because they never did acknowledge their reality that this is how he impacted me. Third one, though, was appreciate. Isn't that what I said? Appreciate. Appreciate the lessons that you have. Appreciate the good thing. Listen, in your audit, all of this, I hope you see how all of this bleeds together, how this whole audit, acknowledge, but then appreciate. That is, be thankful for a few different things. As it relates to your biological father, appreciate whatever lessons, either positive or negative, that you did pick up from them. Part of that appreciation also is recognizing their capacity. Sometimes the reason that a wound won't ever heal is because you're trying to get a father or father figure to give to you what they never received. and you want to acknowledge that reality, that, man, they came out of a particular type of situation, and given what they came out of, man, they were batting 1,000, given what they inherited. But you need to appreciate, wait a minute, not just that biological father, but what about the collective? What about the father figures that have filled in the gap? See, sometimes we try to put too much weight on one part of the portfolio when God has given us a mutual fund that has many aspects to it. You understand that analogy? The whole point of a mutual fund is you're invested in a whole lot of different investments, so that even if one doesn't perform like it's supposed to and goes down, that's all right. You've diversified enough that, yeah, that one didn't perform, but man, this one is performing better than I really expected. Ecclesiastes says something about that. Talks about the fact that we ought to divide our portion between 7 and 8, because you don't know which is going to prosper. Old folk would say it different. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. What they meant by that is, don't try to put so much weight on one thing. Here it is. Ecclesiastes 11:2 says, divide your portion to 7 or to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. In other words, don't put all your weight on one person to love you, when here's 10 other people that love you for no good reason. You mad because this person who don't even love themselves, or who was not loved, who did not inherit love. You're mad because they have not deeded you any love, but they didn't inherit any love. And so you mad, well, I'm not getting what I'm supposed to get from this one person, but here are all these other people who giving you something for no reason, except that God is gracious like that. So appreciate the fact that God has put people in your life. I got to close this down. Look at this last one. Adjust. What did I say? Adjust your behavior according. Is that what they used to say? When I was growing up, they used to have the church announcements. Oh, they would say, govern yourself accordingly. Yeah, that's what they would say. This and that, blah, 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 and don't forget this, that, and that. And the last little thing they would say before they sign off, they say, and govern yourself accordingly. That's all I'm trying to tell you. Okay, here it is, Father's Day. For some of us, it's a great day. We're with our dad and we're blessed. For some of us, it just highlights the wound, particularly as you see other people enjoying their dad and you're going back over your life and wishing things had been different. And then there's a lot in between. Here's all I'm saying. Okay, tell you what. Let's use this day to take an audit. Okay, now what did I inherit from daddy or big daddy, granddaddy or whatever? What has been passed on to me? Let's do an audit. What do I need to hang on to? What do I need to let go of? What can I wear? And it's still fashionable and it still makes a statement. What do I need to just go ahead and give it to the Salvation Army? Can I acknowledge where I actually am emotionally right now and how I'm really feeling about this thing? I still feel some kind of way. Yeah, I'm old and somebody told me I should be over it by now, but you ain't over it. So acknowledge the reality that, hey, man, this really hurt. Or, even with a good dad, you know what, dad never did say this, or he didn't tell me how he loved me. Or maybe you're comparing your dad to some kind of Huxtable situation. Remember, Bill Cosby, see? Look at that. You try to compare your dad to a fantasy when even the fantasy wasn't a good fantasy because that's been uncovered now. You see? Appreciate the fact that, okay, I did learn something. I'm here. I got enough sense to recognize how things should have been different and all these type of things. But thank God I did have some thought. Thank God for that old teacher, who saw something. Thank God for that. Thank God for that coach. Thank God for an old deacon, my Sunday school teacher. Thank God for my pastor. Thank God for this person who loved me, who shouldn't love me, but just loved me for no reason. I'm mad about this one joker, and here 15 that think the world of me. Now, let's do the math. That's all I'm trying to say. Let's do the math. In this audit, am I going to let one person who didn't do what they were supposed to do impact my life over and above these 15 or 20 who are standing ready to do whatever I need, who love me unconditionally, who think the world of me, who say, sweetheart, listen, I love you like you're my own. Matter of fact, here's what my daddy used to say. He said, when you got dealing with your biological children, you just got to take whatever God gave you. He said, but the good thing about adopted children, you can pick that one. Say, I want that one. Hey, you mine. I chose you. Now, children, here's what I need you to do. I need to adjust your behavior. Govern yourself accordingly. I need to adjust your behavior. So now, if you need some help, you still dealing with that daddy issue, then pray and say, you know what? Let me go get some help. Let me talk this thing out. Because time does not heal nothing. It's grace plus truth over time. When you acknowledge reality and you let the grace of God and the people of God confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. See how that works? It's the grace of God plus the truth of God's word over time. That's going to give you deliverance. That's going to give you healing. And I need you to adjust your behavior and recognize where you are, do your little audit, and let's move forward by God's grace. Well, I told you I'd let you go a little bit early. We got to go have our little breakfast. I'm looking forward to it. Audit, acknowledge, appreciate it. That formula works. Listen, children, that formula works. If you will be honest about what you've been given. Now, this doesn't just work for like you and your father. This works for even what you've been given in theological teaching in your church. Because many of us are suffering because of bad teaching. I'll tell you all the time, bad teaching is worse than no teaching. You'll die quicker from poison than you will from starvation. And sometimes we've been spiritually abused by our spiritual fathers. And you need an audit. Okay, now, is what Pastor so-and-so, is what Bishop or Apostle, Trouble Britches, what they say? Now, I heard them say it, but now what does the Bible say about it? Let's audit this thing. Let's acknowledge, okay, this is how this has impacted me because I grew up in a fundamentalist type of thing, or I grew up in a situation that was actually not grace-filled. So I appreciate, you know what? They did the best they could. I did get saved. They were trying to do right. But you know what? Now I need to adjust my behavior. See, that formula works not just with family. That works with spiritual family. That works in a whole lot of different arenas. Well, that's enough. I told you I'm done today. I love you with the love of the Lord. Shout out again to all the great fathers who were standing in the gap. And more importantly, for all the great men who are not just seeing about their own children, but seeing about all the children. Guess what? All of them are ours. And we love all of them, and we want to see you all succeed. I love you, but God loves you most. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Next week, we'll start another little series I'm excited about. I'll give you some more insight about that a little bit later. Matter of fact, I might post something a little bit later. But for right now, have a happy Father's Day, and may the Lord meet you in worship.